Hello everyone and welcome to tutorial number 25 in our survival game series done by Brackeys. I am the CEO of Brackeys, and in this video we are going to take a look at importing the arms for our game. I have included some in our survival assets pack, which we are going to take a look at in a sec. This video is just going to be about the basic importing and setting things up, and then in later videos we are going to focus on scripting the animation to work with our game, and we're going to do this using the built-in Unity mecanim system, which was introduced in Unity 4. Okay, so let's get started. So if you want to use the arms I have made, or I've made a part of, but we'll talk about that in a sec, then you can download the survival assets from my website, and if you don't know how to do that, then you can of course go ahead and watch our bonus video explaining just that. So when you have imported and extracted them, you should be left with this folder, and if we open it up, we can go under imports, then arms, and here you can see a few files. I've included both the Blender file and an FBX file. I recommend you use the FBX file for importing into Unity, but it's really up to you what you want to use. Also, the texture, which is of course UV unwrapped, so it looks really weird here. I've included that in both a JPEG format for just importing into Unity, but also a Photoshop format if you want to create different versions of the texture. So you can have a guy with gloves, you can have a guy with no gloves, you can have darker skin color, whiter skin color, and so on. And then I have a credit text document, because I actually didn't create the model for this or the rig. Those two things, along with one of the animations, were made by EAFG, and you can check them out here. And also I have a link to the license, including how you can use this. But really all there is to it is that you can use it commercially, but you have to credit the author. So you have to say that this was made partially by EAFG. Don't need to mention me at any point, but feel free to do so if you want to. Cool, so now we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and import this into Unity. So I have kind of made a, I've kind of set up a scene to show you what it is we're going to be creating in the next videos, however many that might be. So let me just load up that scene. And here you can see we have the arms holding a sword. And if I go ahead and play the game, let's take a look at what we've got. So we have some punch animations, and it is completely random which one it plays. Then we have the ability to switch between different weapons, so we can switch to this one, and then the hands will actually hold the weapon, and it will follow us around. And now if we attack, it plays different swing animations. And this can be used with a variety of different weapons. We also have some new weapons coming soon, so we don't have to use these quite ugly ones I made back in the day. So that's basically what we're going to be making. Now let's open up our original scene here, so we are back to normal. And let me just go ahead and explain what it is we are going to be doing with this painting. So again, excuse my amazing drawing skills, but this is basically how everything works together in Unity when it comes to animation, and that's what it's really about. So we have our player, and parented to our player we have our main camera, and this you can see if we open up our player, we have the main camera. Under our main camera we currently have the melee. This is something we're going to attach to a game object in our arms, which I've made specifically for this, so that we can just parent a weapon to that, and then it will follow the animation. But that's something we're going to look at in a second. I haven't included it in our painting yet. But basically we have the main camera, and parented to that we're going to have the arms. So they will follow us around no matter what we do. On the arms, we have a component called an animator. And this animator is what helps us, this is what makes the engine include mecanim. On the animator, we have two things. We have an avatar, which defines how the rig is set up. So which bones and which bones are what. So basically, if we have a hand bone, the avatar will help Unity figure out that that is a hand, and so. If we were using a complete humanoid character, so a full character, we could also retarget animation, but that's a bit more advanced. Then attached to the animator, we're going to have a animator controller. And this is what we're going to use to play animations and blend between them. So we are going to do a little bit of scripting, but really most of it is done using the controller. So this is just a quick preview of how a controller might look. And that's again something we're going to cover later, so I won't go into that. Great, so let's import the arms. So hit the project pane, hit create, and then folder. And let's call this arms original. And then double click that to open it. And now we can just drag in the FBX file along with the arms diffuse. There we go. And this might take a little while since it is pretty advanced geometry. It is game ready still though. So now we have the arms 5 here, and you could go ahead and rename that if you want, but I'll just leave it if we decide to make new versions in the future. And we have our arms diffuse texture. The diffuse texture is fine as is, so we're not going to play around with that. Though our arms 5, we want to change some settings. So if we just drag them into our scene, we can have a look at how they are now. And they are really tiny. They are really, really tiny. So let's go and select them in the project pane and then change up the scale factor. Let's try 0.4. And this is really just something you have to play around with. Whenever it comes to animated and rigged objects, I don't like changing the scale inside of Unity. I really like only changing the scale factor. That looks much better, actually. We can go ahead and adjust that once we get them in the view. So we'll just leave that for now. Maybe they need to be a bit bigger. No, that's fine. Okay, so mesh compression, we want that off. Normal tangents, that is import calculate. And the materials, sure, we can do that. Under the rig, this is pretty important. We want to set this as generic. And the root node should be the arm armature and then master. So this one. And this will just help Unity solve out the animations and help it fade better. So that's really important. You choose that. If you made the rig yourself, I'm pretty sure you know what to pick. So let's hit apply on that. And it will re-import the arms once again. There we go. So now we can actually see it is in kind of a battle stance there. So that means that the animation is working because this doesn't look all kinds of weird. Normally you're not in doubt when something is not working. So let's hit the animation. And if you don't know what bone it is, really just play around with it. You can't do anything wrong. Let's go under the animations tab now. So we want to, of course, import animation, and you can just leave these compression and position errors and such as is. So the default take, I see that's just an idle, but not really an idle we want. We want the normal idle here and the idle with weapon. So we can go ahead and exclude this default take. It might not be in the blend file actually, but let's just exclude it from here. So select it and then hit the minus sign. So now it's gone. And all these settings are basically used for defining whether or not an animation should loop. and also saying what kind of clips we have. So if you made these animations yourself and didn't create separate actions for them, that's what they're called in Blender, then you might have to go in and define what start and end frame the animations have. And that's really just about selecting them and dragging around with these sliders and such. Okay, so let's just preview the different animations. So we can see down here we have a preview. So I'll just drag that up a bit, drag it out. So that looks good. And we can change the preview speed up here. So let's just make that 1. And let's have a look at the idle. So that looks very fine, pretty subtle. And soon we should start seeing the fingers animating a bit. There, so that looks good. Then we have the idle with weapon. Now our hands are closed. And we can see that they bounce up and down. That doesn't look right, so it's outside of the range of the source take. So let's hit clamp. Let's hit clamp range. That didn't change anything, so let's hit loop pose. And now it looks good. Awesome. Let's do the same with the idle. So clamp range and loop pose. And now when we skip ahead to the end, we can see that it animates beautifully. Okay, let's have a look at the punch left. Clamp range. And that loops perfectly. And the punch right, clamp range. That looks good too. Then we have the run animation, clamp range, and remember to loop the pose. That looks fine too. Then we have the swing 1, clamp range, and it loops. The swing 2, clamp range, and it looks perfect. Cool, so this was just setting up the import settings. Now we can go ahead and hit apply. And it re-imports. Awesome. So what we want to do now is we want to take the arms, drag it onto the main camera, under the player. Then maybe zero out the positions. And now we can go ahead and drag out the game view here. Maybe drag it, let's see. You can go ahead and make it bigger. Like that, make it a separate window. And now we can adjust the position of our arm. So if we hit play now, you can see that doesn't look too bad. Let's actually go ahead and disable our melee weapons. I'll just drag that back. So our melee system here, go ahead and disable that. Let's focus on the arms a bit more. We could also get it to play an animation by default, which I think we should do. So you can, the apply root motion, if you're having a problem where the animation just jumps or wiggles or is laggy, then try unchecking this or checking it back on, because there are really still some bugs with the mecanim system, and that usually helps. So you are gonna get a lot of errors or silly things happening. Really just Google it and try to figure it out. This is not an easy process. Okay, so the arms 5. Now let's create a controller for this. And remember, the controller is what makes it actually animate. So this is what controls the animation and the blending between them. So let's go down in the project pane. Hit the right click, hit create, and then animator controller. And now let's rename this to arms controller. And now when we select them in our scene view and drag it in, there we go. We should be able to double click this arms controller and it will open up the animator. So let's maximize this, and you can always get this by going to window, animator. I like to have it at the bottom so I can see what we are doing in the top of the view here. So now let's just quickly get in an animation here so we can see what is happening. Let's just throw in the idle on our animator. So what we can do is we can go to our project and then open up our arms, and you can see the different stuff that is our arms. And then we could drag in one of these animations. So just take the idle, for example, and drag it in. But what I'm going to do instead is go under the animator, right click, create state, empty. And a state is really just, well, it's better to explain it with examples. A state could be standing, it could be running, it could be attacking and such. So it's really just what the player is doing right now. And so we have an animation to display that. So this state is going to be called idle. Our player isn't doing anything. And then the motion, that's the animation. So let's hit that little button right there and go into the assets. And let's find, wow, there are plenty of idle animations there. So it's good that we have the path at the button, so we can see where it comes from. And we want the asset arms 5 FPX. So that's the one we want. Uncheck the foot IK. And now when we play the game, because this is set to default, we can see that our arms are playing the idle animation. We should, however, see this animate. We should see a progress bar for that animation. And again, this is just about unchecking the apply root motion. And now we see it there. So you can see how far into the animation we've got. Cool. So that should loop just fine. Now let's bring in our arms quite a bit. Something like that. That looks a lot better. I still think they are quite big in the view. Whoops. So let's maybe bring them down a bit and bring them closer yet. And that's much better. So let's just maximize this and have a look. That looks really nice. But this is just preference. I like them being in the sides and at the bottom of the view so it doesn't distract the player. But really just play around with it until you get something that looks nice. Let's just have a quick look and see whether or not this loops right. So when the blue slider here goes all the way down, we should see no bumping. It loops just fine. Cool. What we could do now is we could apply the texture to get them looking much better. So under our arms, we have the arm armature, and this is just all of the different bones, and it just extends out almost into infinity. Then we have the mesh, and then we have some objects that are used to control the armature. I recommend you leave these be, else you're gonna get some... Oops, my phone went off there. I recommend you leave these be, else you can get some annoying errors in the console saying that they are missing, so just leave them. Okay, so if we select our arm mesh, let's go ahead and take a look at the material here. And so we can just go ahead and drag on the arms diffuse texture there and change the color to completely white. So now we should see the textures working just right. That looks really great. Okay, cool. So now that that's working, I just want to give out some cool tips and tricks. Because you might experience what is called clipping. So if I just move these even closer to the camera, like this, maybe that's gonna get it. Oh, I moved the whole camera there, so just the arms. I'm just gonna try to show an extreme case. There we go. This is called clipping, and this is whenever our mesh goes within our camera render bounds. So right now our arms are too close to the camera for it to render. To adjust the clipping planes, which is exactly this, so how near an object can be for the camera to render it, we can select the camera and go to the clipping planes and then bump in the near variable. So let's go to something like 0.03. And this is just much better. Now we can see the whole arm. Though you might notice a problem with this, we can now see the cylinder that are attached to the player, so we can see this cylinder. And I would like to keep the cylinder there since it's really nice for just quickly finding the player. And so I just want it to be invisible in game. And to do this, let me just undo the position of the arms here, so they won't be all weird. There we go. And then adjust the clipping planes again, so 0.03. To hide this in game, what we can do is we can create a separate layer for them. So now let's go ahead and select our graphics. This is the cylinder. And let's go ahead and go to layer and then hit add layer. And we are going to call this player cylinder. I've already done this earlier when I was we're playing around with this. So player cylinder, and then go back to the graphics and select the layer, so player cylinder. Now we can go under the main camera to what's called culling mask, which is now set to everything. And if we then uncheck the player cylinder, we can see that the cylinder stops drawing in game. So now we have it working and we have it positioned, and you can also have the arms get as close to the camera as you want. So that's basically it for this tutorial, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. This was just getting the arms set up to work in its most basic form. In the future, we're going to take a look at animating them and making them work with weapons. So look forward to that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.